Hello everyone, my name is Marcus and this is another Warmane video. This is the final installment of my warrior guide, of which there are 3 parts. The first video was about gems, gear and enchantments. The second part was about talents and glyphs, and the third part is about macros, and this is that video. So let's start immediately. Why do warriors need so many macros? Well, you need macros so that you don't need to press 3 different buttons to cast one spell. Warriors, especially in Wrath of the Lich King, have to change stance quite often and equip their one-handed shield, equip their two-handed weapon again. There are some additional complexities to playing Arms Warrior properly. So the reason you need macros is to remove that complexity and make it more simple. So instead of needing 3 buttons to cast one spell, you just press 1, and that's what this video is about. I'm going to show you what the modifiers are to make macros yourself, and I'm also going to share my own macros so that you can just copy and paste them and use them right away. I have linked a Google document in the description so that you can just open it and use the macros. So let's go back to why warriors need so many macros. Well, some spells require you to be in a certain stance. So for example, for Pummel, to interrupt, you need to be in Berserker stance. But if you are in battle or defensive stance, you can use Shield Bash. But to use Shield Bash, you need your one-hander and shield. So you can understand the complexity that is needed to play it smoothly. So that's really why we need macros. So the macros I have linked in the video will almost completely eliminate the need to think about your stance. This allows you to play your warrior to its maximum potential, and pressing different buttons doesn't become a real nightmare and a complication. I remember when I first started, I had to press 3 or 4 different buttons sometimes to just do one thing. And other classes don't need to do this. Death Knights don't need to do this. Hunters don't need to do this. Druids, maybe a little bit. Arms Warrior in particular that has this problem. So we need to solve this using macros. So before we look at actual macros, I think it's important to understand text and target modifiers. This means being able to decide what target your spells go on and casting a particular spell depending on what stance you're in. There's no point trying to cast Pummel if you're not in Berserker stance. So let's have a look here. So we have stance 1, cast spells when in battle stance. So if you're not in battle stance, it will not cast that spell. There's stance 2, cast spell when in defensive stance, and stance 3, cast spell when in Berserker stance. So stance 1 is battle stance, stance 2, defensive, stance 3 is Berserker stance. You can also do stance 1/3, for example. So this casts a spell when in battle or Berserker stance. Now let's look at some target modifiers. Let's have a look at target equals focus. Target equals focus casts a spell on your focus target. So this is the extra target that you can create so that you can keep an eye on that person but not necessarily have them targeted all the time. This is very useful in arenas when you want to be able to cast an interrupt or a stun or some kind of spell like that on the healer without switching targets. So a good example of this is a focus charge macro or a focus interrupt macro. And macros like that, again, are linked in the description where I have a Google document where you can just copy and paste everything. Another nice macro modifier is target equals name. This is good if you play a lot with a friend or you have a particular pocket healer. And I will typically do this if I have someone I want to intervene to. So I want to go back to my healer and I just write their name. A target equals the name of your friend. And like that, you don't need to click on the person. And if you're in a battleground or you're in a world PvP situation with a big group and you can't target the person easily, then this is a very good thing to have so you can go back to your healer and not have to think about where he or she is, and you can just focus on using intervene. You don't have to think about anything else. The next modifier is target equals mouse over. Mouse over spells can be useful for a number of reasons. You can be in arenas, you can target someone you don't have in focus, such as a pet or a shaman totem. It's also very good for raid healing with grid, so you can quickly cast spells on people without having to click on their character. It's very useful for quickly doing something. And if you've watched some of my live streams, you'll actually see that I can very easily use a mouse over target, and sometimes I use it instead of the focus target because that's just what occurs to me. So rather than going through the list of all the macros that I have, because that, as I said, is in the Google Doc linked below, I'm going to show you some examples to help you understand what they do. Like this, if you want, you can make your own macros, and that's probably more useful than just giving you something to copy and paste. But it's there if you want it. I'm going to use the first example, which is my charge macro. Hashtag show tooltip charge, cast stance 2-3, battle stance, cancel or a bladestorm, cancel or a hand of protection, slash start attack, slash auto attack, brackets harm, close brackets, cast target equals mouse over exists, charge, colon, charge, and then slash cast hamstring. Let's go through all of these and understand what's going on. Slash cast stance 2-3 battle stance. So if you're in defensive stance, which is stance 2, or in berserker stance, which is stance 3, this will switch to battle stance because charge requires battle stance. Slash cancel or a bladestorm. This just cancels bladestorm. So if you need to charge to interrupt something, or you're just out of range and bladestorm is not doing any damage, this will let you cancel it. The next one is slash cancel or a hand of protection. Now, if you're in arenas or even a BG, a paladin can use hand of protection on you to save you from some damage. But if you're no longer taking damage, you can just cancel it so you can charge immediately. This removes all of the possible obstacles to you being charged. The next one is slash start attack. This just starts attacking the target. And the next line is slash cast auto attack brackets harm. This casts auto attack, so when you start playing warrior, you have as your first spell auto attack. That's that spell. But the harm clause, where it says harm, does it if the target is unfriendly. So the reason we have this is we just want to make sure that we're actually attacking the target when we use charge. The next one is the main one, and that's cast open brackets target equals mouse over, comma, exists, close bracket. So this means target a mouse over target if there is one, if it exists, charge, and then colon charge. So what this means is cast charge on a mouse over target if there is one, if not, cast charge. Now, most of the time, there isn't a mouse over target necessarily, so you can just use it like a regular charge macro. Slash cast hamstring. Not everyone does this, but you don't use hamstring when you're in range, and you don't use charge when you're in hamstring range. So I just use both. Like that, I don't need to think about having two macros. I use hamstring when they're close and charge when they're far away. So you don't have any risk of casting one instead of the other. Let's look at another macro. Sometimes you need to equip a particular item to use a spell like a shield. Let's take a look at my shield wall macro. So first of all, we have show tooltip shield wall, which when you put your mouse over the spell, it just gives you the information for shield wall. Cancel or a bladestorm, we know what that is. It cancels bladestorm. Then equip slot 16, and that is your main hand slot. Slot 16 is your main hand slot. Then I have Wrathful Gladiator's hand axe. You will need to change the name of that if you have a different weapon. Then slash equip slot 17, you have Wrathful Gladiator's shield wall. Again, if you have a different shield, you need to change the name of that. And equip slot 16 is your offhand. So if you play other characters which are dual wield, you understand that slot 16 is main hand and slot 17 is offhand. Then cast stance 1 or 3. So 1 is battle stance, 3 is berserker stance. Basically, cast a defensive stance if you are not in it, because you need defensive stance to cast shield wall. Then slash cast, open bracket, equipped, semicolon, shield, shield wall. And this casts a shield wall if a shield is equipped. So the benefit of a macro like this is quite clear. You don't need to press 3 different things. Let's look at a final macro, and that's my intervene macro. Hashtag show tooltip intervene, then cancel or a blade storm, we know what that is, then cast stance 1/3 defensive stance. You need to be in defensive stance to cast intervene. And then finally /cast stance 2, target equals mouse over, exists. So this means if there is a mouse over target and you are in stance 2, then cast intervene. Otherwise, just cast intervene. Now, as you can see from how long this has taken, it would be silly to go through each and every macro and explain what it does. So I have a document where I have explained each and every macro that I have for Arms Warrior. If you have any extra questions, it's easier if you just ask me during my live streams and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you for watching this part of my Arms Warrior guide, and thank you even more if you've watched all 3 parts, and I hope you found it useful. Next week I'm planning on making a Marcux's Moments video because I have a lot of recorded footage from the time that I've played, so I hope you can look forward to that. If you'd like to be updated on future content, please subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. We're very close to getting 700 subscribers, and maybe by the time I release this video I'll have 700 subscribers, which in that case, thank you. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.